welcome. Thank you guys for coming. Now, when I had first started this project, when I first agreed to do this, I didn't really know what I was doing. And I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm giving it a good go. And so about a year ago, there was a horde of Cobs that came out of Yemen, all mixed, Spanish and Spanish colonial. It was all of Philip II and Philip III. And there were a couple of interesting pieces in this group of coins. There were two local imitative Cobs. One very clearly with the Mexico City mint mark. Clearly it wasn't from Mexico City. And there was another one that was in the style of a Spanish mainland Cob, but they shared the same reverse die. So I felt that it was really interesting. It really piqued my interest. And I really wanted those. I really wanted those two pieces for my own collection. So I bought them, but the caveat was that I had to write an article about them. I had to do research on this group in order to buy them. I said, fine. I did it. And I bought them, but I had no idea where to start. So I had these ideas of grandeur that I was going to do all this research and figure out exactly where these Cobs came from, but that proved way more difficult than I thought it would be. I was never able to really pinpoint down exactly where they were made, but I was able to get a better idea of the general area. So now, one of the things that I found really interesting about this was that there were Cobs in an Islamic country and there was imitations. Cobs were the first Spanish pieces of eight were the first universal currency on a global scale. There were other currencies before it that circulated in the known world, but not on a global scale. So Spanish pieces of eight circulating the world over. They're known for good purity in metal, they're known for good weight, they're consistent in design, people can recognize them, you can buy them in quantities. So, what is the Silk Road? The Silk Road is a very advanced and extensive trade route going from the east to the west, where it's very complex. You've got an overland route from the east here going all the way and making its way to the Mediterranean and then finally to Europe. That's the overland route. The maritime route, which is it's called the Maritime Silk Road, or more commonly known as the spice route or the spice trade. That's going, again, from the east, but it's traveling down through Indonesia, Malaysia, going up, traveling around India, getting spices and dyes and other wares. And then it made it to the Arabian Peninsula, where it split, going down here from Oman, then staying close to Yemen, and then going up through the Red Sea. And then from there, taking a land route here and down here, going up through Yemen and Arabia into the Mediterranean to get trade, get all the precious wares from the east. So what were some of the things that we're trading? Well, a lot of the spices, like nutmeg, anise, pepper, turmeric, various other things. And these served a multitude of purposes. You had them to flavor otherwise bland foods. You had them to store foods for drying them out, curing foods, and so they would last longer. Perfumes, dyes, all these various things were very hot commodities in the West. And some of the things that were traded for them were not just textiles or other wares, but some places actually accepted silver for what you were trading, actually what they were selling. So it makes sense that if you've got traders coming from Europe with local currencies there, it's going to look strange when it travels to a foreign language or foreign country. So they showed up with Spanish traders or other European traders. Here's something, it's just in Indian harvest of pepper in Kerala. I thought this was an interesting picture in depicting some of the things that you could find on the trade route. Now, one of the things, so this is Yemen. The two port cities that would probably had the highest likelihood for where these Cobs would appear would have been Aden and Mocha, because those are right on the corner of the country. You know, you're going up to the Red Sea, you're coming into the Arabian Sea. Those are probably the most likely locations. Then you've got the major silver mines of Sana'a and Dumar. I know I'm not saying those correctly, but that's okay. And they've been producing coins for more than 2,000 years. You've got the Oxumites, who were part of ancient Ethiopia and ancient Yemen, who were actually making coins on the same weight standard as the Roman coins of the time. They were just fractions, you know. So they're no stranger to making coins. And, you know, they've got all different kinds of coins for a long, long time, long history. And so, yeah, the silver mines and the two possible locations. So, in the group of coins, it was primarily Philip II and Philip III, and this was the mix of coins that were found there. So, we had colonial mints of Mexico City and Potosi, and then we had a number of the mainland mints of Granada, Segovia, Seville, Toledo, Valladolid. I learned quite a bit about this. I didn't really know hardly anything about Cobs before this. My brother and my father know far more about Cobs than I do. I mean, they've forgotten more than I've learned. And so I didn't really know how to tell the difference between a Philip II or Philip III. I didn't know what to look for. I've handled Cobs. I know where the legends are. I know how to read the denomination and the mint mark, but I didn't really understand what I was looking at when it came to these. So it was a slow-going process at first, but I learned a few things. I put them in order as best as I could, and I discovered a few variations that I felt were quite interesting, and some that are actually unique to denominations and mints. So it was a slow-going process, but it was very, very educational. So here is the colonial Cobs first. And this one is an early type for Philip II. It's not very large pictures, but so this was an early type for Philip II. You've got two fleur-de-lis here, and this is actually a pretty rare type. And then we've got this one, and this one over here. No, sorry, this one and this one, where there's a little crescent above the mint mark, the O and the mint mark. I don't know what to ascribe that to. I've spoken with my brother about this, and he believes that it is probably this punch, but broken, or it's a punch like that, but broken. In this group, there were 4 examples with this crescent marking above the mint mark. I'd never seen it before, and I thought it was interesting and neat, and I couldn't find any other examples of this on the literature that I looked in or anywhere else. So is it possible that it's a broken punch for that? It might be. It might not be. It could be something that was made that way. I don't know. There would have to be extensively more research done on them. This one is actually quite rare. It's very faint, but you've got a D right here that was added. That's it. I couldn't find it listed in Cayenne. It was listed in Calico. There was a few other reference books like Calbedo and Grove that didn't list this, but it's late Philip II, and it also has a lion over a castle right here. You can't really see it, but you've got right here the hind legs of the lion that are poking out on the side of the castle. That's an interesting variety because they put the lions in the wrong place, so they corrected it by stamping the castle over it. Now, this next one here, this one was kind of confusing for me, and I'm not sure what to think about it. I'd definitely like some more feedback if anybody can clear this up for me. So you've got the arms of Naples and Sicily right here, and that looks like it's for Philip II. But looking at the legend, you've got the P right here for Philippus, and what looks like III, which would make it for Philip III, but the shield and the crown are in the style of Philip II. So I really was stuck on this, and I cataloged this as Philip III with stylistic features of Philip II, but I don't know if that's actually correct or not. It really stumped me, and it took me a while to come down to something that I could write down and give it a logical argument. Whether it's accurate or correct or not is another story. I'd need some another opinion on that one. Now, this next one for Bolivia, this is a really rare variety. There's not very many known. There's a couple of plated in Paoletti. There's one plated in Calbedo. But instead of having a beaded border on the obverse and reverse, it's got little X's. Now, that's neat. That's, you don't see that normally. It doesn't show up very often, certainly. So let's move on to the mainland Cobs. So since there was a big mixture of mints from various places in Spain, it gave a good indication of the types of things that were in circulation at the time that these Cobs were made it to Yemen. One of the things I noticed is on Granada 2 reals that the octalobe on the reverse is actually a layer of 3. That does not appear on any of the other mints for the 2 reals, just Granada. So even if you don't have a mint mark or an assayer's letter or even the denomination, you could still figure out what mint it is in an approximate time period based on the reverse die. This one, I dated this one to circa 1603 to 1604 based on the octalobe on the reverse and the arms of Portugal, which would make it Philip III. And the arms of Portugal weren't added to Cobs until starting in 1591 with Madrid. It started on the milled coinage of Segovia in 1586 and was sporadically added to the other mints after that time. And surprisingly, after the arms of Portugal were actually taken away from the arms of Spain about 1640, Dan, is that right? About 1640, some of the coats of arms actually kept the arms of Portugal in their arms when they struck coins, even though it was up until about 1700, which is quite a long time after the dissolution. So we've got Segovia here. This one is an OI over IM. I wasn't able to find much for examples on that. I couldn't tell if any of the plated examples and the references were actually that, or if it was just the OI and the IM as separate coins. Just felt it was interesting. Then we've got here the assayer I for Segovia again. Does not have the arms of Portugal, and for Segovia it has to be prior to 1596, because that's when the arms of Portugal were added in Segovia on the Cobs, and it went from 2 reals, 4 reals, 8 reals, 1 reals. They all started in 1596 for the arms of Portugal, and we can tell this because of how the mint mark is set up, the mint and assayer's letter, and because of the lack of the arms of Portugal. This one's pretty nice. It's got a nice bold ordinal for Philip II, and it's got a bold date. Just a nice example with a lot going on for it. This 2 real right here actually is an unlisted date, though that really doesn't mean much for Cobs because there's tons and tons of them that are unlisted dates. Just a matter of finding them. The manufacture of them is so poor that you oftentimes miss large portions of the coins that are off the planchet. A lot of times it's the date, which is unfortunate. This one we're lucky to have 2 digits right here, 2 partial digits, 2 O's, which would make that for 1600. Oop. Now, this one right here for Seville, because the chained border or base of the crown, we can date that to approximately 1612, which falls in line with other dated coins, though this one is undated. This one here, we've got the ordinal, and that will put it approximately 1611 to 1615. And it's also got the omission of omnium. The omission of omnium also places it in that date range, which also falls in line with 8 reals and other dated Cobs. Toledo, I'm going in alphabetical order by mint, so to make space I had to put Valladolid over here. So Toledo, just interesting mint mark and assayer's letters. It's, you've got an O or an M within an O. It's not a typical mint that you see. The annulets on the reverse are solid versus this one, which are annulets, so they're just beaded dots. The ordinal here with the 2 colons, or semicolons. Then this 2 real, just a neat mint mark in a retrograde C. I found a lot of these, the smaller mint, or the other mints that you don't normally see, like Toledo and Valladolid, and I studied those ones a little bit more because they're ones I had not seen, or I felt they were more interesting because they were ones I don't normally see. So I spent, like I said, I spent a little bit more time on them, and as I am a little bit more fascinated with them. And you've got the Arms of Portugal here. The Valladolid 2 Real, one thing that is unique to this one are the little horns right here on the octolobes, and it's on all of the middle portions of the octolobes and the angles. You have the little one here, and there's a little ghosting of one right here, which is going to be impossible to see from this image. And there's, so yeah. Then we've got the imitative Cobs. Now, another thing one of the things that were really interesting about this is the style of manufacture that these were made in. They were made in the same style of manufacture as normal Cobs, where they pour them out as a bar, sand, or wherever they're making the bar. So it's got 2 beveled edges, like this, and 2 sheared edges where they cut it. Now, so it's going to be rounded. The beveled edges are going to be across from each other, and the cut edges are going to be across from each other as well. So the planchets were made in the same way. These were hand struck. You've got weakness. They're cockeyed. They're uneven. There is significant cracks in these dies for that, from prolonged use. It's got a mint mark for Mexico City, MOF, though it's very crude. And the rendering of the shield is very crude as well. You've got the reverse die. Clearly, that is a Mexican cross. It's got a flare out here, and it's got a bead at the end. That is a quintessential Mexican icon for Cobs. And these two actually share the same reverse die. You've got a little die crack or die chip right here, which is right here, and it's the same one right here. This part right here is very open, like this, and in here, though there is a partial weakness there, it is filled in from where the die had started breaking down. And you start comparing it in the hand, and there's other features there that are, that positively identify it as the same die. Now these two dies are completely different. This is a much newer die than this one is. The 8 right here is significantly different. This one also happens to appear to have looks like a legend. See, these were made in an Islamic country. Latin was not part of their everyday use. They were speaking Arabic or local dialects. Perhaps if you had traders that were very experienced, they might be conversing in other languages along the way, perhaps Hindi or other Indian languages, but Latin was not something that would have been in everyday use. And so this one has no legend. With the inclusion of the legend, that also shows that they were starting to become more sophisticated. Copying whatever was there, whatever they had on hand, but the addition of a legend is more sophisticated. So, with 2 different obverse dies, 1 matching die, the way that they were manufactured with the cut edges, the beveled edges, the purity. This one is actually approximately 93% pure silver. This one is approximately 90% silver. Other trace elements like copper and lead. So they were made of good metal. Being made of good metal, the manufacturing process It's a style that's recognizable as other Cobs are. These were made for circulation and not to deceive people. They were bullion at the time that they were made. And since the latest date of the Cobb, the group in this, of these Cobs is about 1615, that would place these in the late 16 teens, early 1620s. And it shows you what was circulating alongside these things, what they needed the silver for, or what, yeah. So, any questions? Yes.
So, you know this is from Yemen.
Yes.
You don't know anything about the context, whether they were in a shipwreck or anything like that?
They were all totally encrusted. They all had thick green verdigris and sand on them. So they were not, as far as I could tell, they were not a shipwreck item, but I don't know. I don't know where they came from. They were just bought and said, this is where these came from, do you, you know, and
Okay, so further than that, is this a unique find, Cobs in Yemen?
no.
Are there other ports like that?
No, over the years there's been many, many finds of Cobs and other Spanish colonial coins there. A lot of Maria Teresa thalers, you can still find those coming out of Yemen and other parts of the Middle East.
But are these the only imitative issues you've been able to identify?
Well, you know, there's other things that have come out like this, but you can't, no one, oh, it's just a fake coin, it's a, you know, it's a contemporary counterfeit. It's not really, you know, no one has really taken it to look at it as like, oh, this is an imitation made to circulate locally because they needed it, or they wanted it, or they had bullion. I mean, they had lots of silver in Yemen. They've been doing it for thousands of years. And so it's not like manufacturing of coin was something new to them. They knew what they were doing. They knew the process was down with them. So,
But I'm also thinking of me, they got Spanish colonial stuff on a regular basis, which seems to have been the case.
yeah.
Then they seem to have needed more if they were producing imitations. I'm thinking of the case of the Roman coins in India, which is similar. You get
Sure.
the Roman issues, usually very worn, craft, really.
Hold, yeah, yeah.
And then the imitative issues, but there in India, there were also, seems to have been used primarily for jewelry, for necklaces, for stuff like that. So I'm curious why there would have been additional need in Yemen to create Spanish-like coins, and they did them very faithfully.
They did. I mean,
It's amazing.
when I first saw these two pieces, they fooled me. I didn't know what they were, but I didn't study them at that time. And I mean, Cobs are not my area of expertise. This is something that I wanted to do because I wanted to buy these pieces. And I found them totally fascinating. You know, I mean, this to me is very reminiscent of like you said, the ancient Romans, but also the Celts and other imitative pieces. I mean, you've got imitative Athens owls, you know, imitative Alexander the Great tetradrams and other, I mean, there are so many things, and in a lot of those places where they're imitative, you can actually track the degradation of the design based on how far away it is from the original issue. I mean, they're like in the Black Sea region and like Colchis, they have imitations there that they're just crazy degraded. I mean, they look like stick figures my 3-year-old drew. And so, yeah. So there's a lot of imitative pieces around the world. You know, sometimes they just get misconstrued as just a fake. You know, but there are differences between contemporary imitations, contemporary counterfeits, which were made to deceive people, and just modern counterfeits and concoctions. So, yeah. Mac?
There wouldn't happen to be any contemporary documentation in Yemen of the equivalent of a viceroy's decree authorizing their production or something like that?
I have no idea, but you could probably go to Turkey and look in Ottoman archives and find out, which I'm not going to do because I can't read Arabic. And I was also told that there is a very, very good Islamic library in St. Petersburg. I think it was St. Petersburg. That they've got the largest Islamic library in the world. So 2 languages I'm not very good at, Arabic and Russian, which Cyrillic. Both languages I'm not very high on my proficiency list. Yes, Brad.
In other hordes of Cobs outside of Yemen, is it common to find both Iberian and colonial Cobs mixed together as they were in this?
Well, I don't know. I know, when my dad, back 20 years ago, when my dad used to get, occasionally get hordes of Cobs out of Indonesia, mostly those were Mexico, so I don't know if it was common for hordes to have, land hordes to have mixture of mainland Spain and colonial. I just don't know. Dan, do you know?
Experience, I think that does happen
On
quite a bit.
for mainland, for land-buried Cobs, like horde
Yeah.
Cobs?
And shipwreck too. Once it's left the new world, it all tends to mix.
Oh, that makes sense. After it gets back to Spain, it'll commingle and get exported again because it's just bullion.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff.
Okay. Matt?
Did you do a comparison as far as the actual silver weight of the imitative pieces versus the other Cobs?
Oh yes, sorry. So this one here, like I said, it's 92, 93% silver, actually weighs 27 grams. So it is spot on weight. This one, however, weighs 24 grams, which is significantly light, and is only 90% silver. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, 24.04 grams and 27.12 grams. So it was light, but I think it was for weight, not because it didn't have a specific value. Like this is worth 20 dinars or whatever, whatever it is that was circulating, or is worth a moher or whatever. It was, here's silver bullion, here's your weight. They could have counted it out by here's 20 pieces of silver, which would have been inconsistent, but I'm sure if you've got one that's 3 grams light, they may have been just cutting them off just to get the bullion to flow, just to get the bullion out into the marketplace. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the contemporary Yemeni coinage of that period, it's very primitive and very small and usually very debased. This is a time when the Ottomans in Yemen were losing control, and the Qasimid dynasty, which ruled Yemen from basically 1592 until the early 20th century. Qasimids, they were on the upswing and insurgent against the Ottomans, and the coinage is mostly small silver coins the size of like a dime, very debased, very crudely made. And Yemen's always wanted these bigger coins. I think so. This was, I think, the beginning for Yemen when these larger coins began to circulate there, and I could see that maybe local demand hasn't produced there. later on, they begin to get the more milled coins into Yemen, like the Marie traces and European dollars and such.
Yeah, sure.
It makes sense, yeah. They want to be with one larger, heavier silver coin for trade.
Yeah.
They will.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to use one of these to go out and buy a loaf of bread. I mean, that yeah, it's going to be a big loaf. Yeah. I mean, so these big silver coins are used, you know, for large transactions. I mean, if you were to, I mean, go buy a whole week's worth of groceries, you know. That's not what you were going to do with it. You'd use smaller sized silver and copper coins for everyday use. I mean, they're the workhorse of the community, of the commerce. So, Dan.
Following up with that, I have two questions.
Yes.
Following up with that, what evidence directly do you have that these were made in Yemen? Couldn't they have been made somewhere else along the way and just were in with the other coins?
That is totally possible, and you know, I don't know the answer to that. I'm basing this attribution based on the find, nothing else. I mean, that's you know, sometimes we look at ancient coins and attribute them sometimes to where they were found. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's true or it's accurate, but that's what we've got to go off of.
Well, what would be interesting is to see if these ever turn up somewhere else.
Oh yeah, if they turned up other places, like if they turned up in South Africa, for example, which is totally possible, you know, right down around the Horn.
Mombasa.
Yeah, it totally could, because those were major trade hubs, and like they were stopping areas.
If you're a counterfeiter, why would you make it such high quality silver so close to the weight? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions for these two suckers, but and I don't know if we'll ever figure out exactly where these were struck, you know, where they were manufactured, where the silver came from. The three main components of these things are silver, copper, and lead. You know, that could be anywhere. You know, not every place has the same trace elements, but it's those trace elements that help you identify where things came from.
My other question is,
Yes.
You said that you have these two, but what's the disposition of the rest of the coins in the hoard?
Those are, I own those two. The other ones I was loaned for cataloging and to research and catalog and write an article about them and do this. So I don't know what's going to happen to the Cobs after this. All right. Thank you guys for coming.